Let's get it going on the Lockdown Royals Padres crossover episode. Talking all about the Royals and the Padres, baseball, 162-game season, everything that has to do with baseball from the Royals and Padres in national perspective. I'm Rylan Stiles, joined by Javier. As you can find me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at Lockdown Royals. Javi, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno. A great Twitter handle, dare I say. Rylan. I think that it is one of the best on the network, if I do say so myself.
Absolutely underrated for dang sure, and it's really good. It's my top two Twitters on the network, and I'm not going to give you my order. But thank you so much for making Locked On Royals or Locked On Padres your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Vice Versa show and check out, I would say check out the Chargers show, but they kind of historically collapsed in the NFL playoffs. And also, I'm not sure how San Diegans feel about the Chargers, so maybe they're happy that they collapsed. But
they're happy for sure.
For Kansas Cityans, check out Locked On Chiefs. And check out Locked On Chiefs and talk about the Chiefs moving on to the next round. So, Javi, we are currently sitting here talking on January the 18th, whenever you hear this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in that no man's land where it's not so close to the season that you're smelling peanuts and Cracker Jacks and freshly cut grass. But we're also not so far away that there's a ton of future offseason moves. The dust in the offseason's kind of settled in now. The offseason's kind of over, but we're not quite there. We're not quite in spring training yet. And so I wanted to discuss, before these teams head to Arizona, I wanted to discuss baseball's season from a fan, media, everything perspective. Because it's the longest in all of sports, and because it's the longest in all of sports, it's the shortest offseason. I mean, the World Series now ends in November. And then you have December, January off, but it's filled with December, filled with winter meetings and filled with arbitration and filled with trades and filled with free agency. And January is kind of filled with a bit of nothingness, and you get a little break there. But then February rolls around and pitchers and catchers report, Fan Fest happens, and you're right back in the swing of things going full force into the year. So what is the best way, in your opinion, to handle baseball consumption? And what I mean by this specifically is like in football. If you watch your favorite football team play, pro or college, you know you can make an analysis, you can make an opinion, a take, you can make takeaways from the game you're watching. You know it's true that you can take something away from every single game, and you can overreact to every single game. In basketball, even though it's an 82-game season, there are moments where one of your favorite players is going to look like a star one night, and you're going to say, wow, he can really score 30 points. Can he do that more consistently? But in baseball, it's more taxing on the fans, I think, because no matter which side of the aisle that you fall on, if you fall on the whole side of you don't want to overreact or you do want to overreact, you're going to get pushback. So if you are sitting here in April, right, and let's say Bobby Witt Jr. hits 4 home runs in a game. Unbelievable. And I come on this podcast and I start screaming and yelling about the 4 home run game. Well, the very next day, he might go 0 for 4, and then people are saying, see, you shouldn't have overreacted that one game. Or you call something a big win in April, and people are saying, well, that's stupid to call something a big win in April. There's no such thing. But then you look back in October, and you finished a single game in or out of the playoffs. Those games count the same, April through September. But you still want to walk the line of not being too reactionary while being reactionary enough. So, how do you find the balance when it's such a taxing season?
Oh, man. I mean, well, first of all, I just want to say I really greatly enjoy our general baseball talks at our weekly sort of crossover. It's always a blast. We are at that phase of the off season where people are like, oh, Adam Duvall, where's he going? You know what I mean? No offense to Adam Duvall, fine player. I actually think the Padres could use him, maybe even the Royals, whatever. But we're at that phase, right? And we're at that phase where, Shohei Ohtani, where's he going? You know what I mean? We're getting all those there's so many stories in baseball that maybe we'll do for next week's general crossover the weird, like, oh my God, we ran out of things to talk about stories. We'll do that next week, folks. But for now, for me, I think when it comes, I think there's two things part of your question. One is just how to survive between like what period we're in, and then how to actually survive the season. I think for the period we're in, for me, I've always just liked talking general like baseball vibes. And what I mean by that is just talking about a movie, talking about your favorite ballpark experiences, talking to people about the sport, but not like what's going on about the sport right now, at least for me. That tends to get me excited. I don't know why. It makes me happy because if you keep talking about what your team has to do and top 10 this, top 10 free agents for the MLB season, what are they going to do with Juan Soto? Why do they? If you focus too much on that, I find that you're just going to kind of like overheat, like the move in Pokemon where your attack, you're going to lose some of that fire if you keep using overheat too much. It's got a lot of damage. Let me tell you, that overheat move. Shout out my guy Charizard, man. Or Magmar, was that the other one? I forgot. Shout out to my OG Pokemon fans. You're going to overheat yourself. So I recommend to folks, take a breather. I personally, it's always pretty easy because I'm doing a crap ton of other things. I have a bunch of other, interests. I'm tweeting out little comic books and stuff. But I find that that's a way to survive for those who might not have as many interests as I do. But when it comes to kind of the full season, it's something that's taken me a long time, Rylan, a long time to master. And especially, I think, with both of our teams in two completely different ways. You know what I mean? The how to survive a Royals season versus how to survive a very long Padres season are two completely different questions. I think that it's hard to survive as a Royals fan, but the Padres do have teams like the Padres, contenders, World Series contenders, have their own reasons for why it's really tough. But Rylan, before we get into those reasons, before you let me continue my patented Javier Reyes monologue, rumor has it, you got to talk to people about something that's very special, very important to the Locked On faithful. We've been talking about it for a long time. Tell them about it, Rylan.
Sources have confirmed. I have to tell you about our good friends over at BetOnlinenet. BetOnlinenet is your own source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis with incredible breakdowns about odds and trends and professional and amateur leagues out there, from pro football to college bowl season, basketball, World Cup, World Baseball Classic, even everything that you want is all over there at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, they also have those as well. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your betting info. Head over to the website right now and use your mobile device. BetOnline is where the game starts. And Javi, one of my favorite things to do is go to BetOnline and go over to their sportsbook and look at the more funny, I call them funny, but it's not like the right word for it, props. For example, there's one in the NBA world that I've been circling for a long time now, and that is that the BetOnline folks have a odds set on how LeBron James will break the all-time scoring record. Will it be a 2-point shot, a 3-point shot, or a free throw? Javi, if you had to bet right now, what would you bet?
Free throw. He knows that he's about to pass it, puts up a dumb shot, but then sells the foul.
I respect that. I respect that.
Thank you.
So, Javi, you can go bet on that over there at betonline.net.
Getting a lot of calls there. This is a famous man, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
This is a famous guy. I mean, this dude is like tight with like Sam Presti and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like all-star players. I mean, this is a dude. Let me tell you guys. Let me tell you.
Well, Javi, we're back. Oh my gosh, we're back. And I just want to tell you about yourself getting to finish the explanation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. You're clearly not distracted by the many phone calls you're getting right now, but have no fear, Sir Stiles. I will take over for a second. So for me, surviving the baseball season with your team, which you could probably touch on more, so I'll be quick about that. For yours, it's just like it's a gauntlet. You just can't have super high expectations, and don't be like Dolphins fans. And what I mean by that is, don't just inexplicably get absolutely livid that your team isn't good when it was so expected. right? The Dolphins this past weekend, they lost to the Bills in a close game. And for some reason, they were upset despite the fact they were on their third string quarterback and facing the 2 seed in the AFC. So it's like, have some reasonable expectations, what I think for Royals. And you could probably attest this more. And read up on prospects. Definitely read up on prospects. Read up on just the tiny little incremental developments that guys are making. And just rally around like the fun sort of blogs out there. There are really smart and creative people out there who can turn things like the Jesse Winker incident this past year where he got delivered a pizza. Like, enjoy the fun, silly things in baseball when your team isn't necessarily competitive. It's tough, but I think Padres fans could probably allude to this more, where they're getting excited about the most random of things, right? The Will Myers meme was like the most exciting thing. The one where he looked really high on TV. That was probably the most exciting, fun thing to happen for Padres fans at that time, and like since like 1998. You know what I mean? Like a long time ago. Or when Trevor Hoffman did the saves record, whatever. You get my point.
I totally agree.
For the Padres, I'd say that a team like the Padres has such sky high expectations. They didn't have as many high expectations last year because of Tatis, the Goober, because of some of the injuries they had, because of the collapse in 2021. But now, after what happened in 2022, there's going to be sky high expectations. This year, you're expecting a Juan Soto bounce back. Fangraphs has him as their projected A4 player, which I think makes sense. Totally makes sense. I know people are bringing up the defense, but plus 5 outs above average in 2021, minus 12 in 2022, I believe. They're probably expecting a regression to the mean, right? Sorry, I got a little bit too stat nerdy for you, Rylan. I know how much you hate that.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
I think that you just have to remember how long of a season it is. You have to remember that year after year, there are teams that get hot late at the right time, or there are teams that start off slow. That's not always the recipe for what wins a World Series, but you saw it with the Phillies this year. The Phillies were just hanging in there, weird team. But just remember, as long as you kind of make it, as long as you're kind of a contender in baseball, you can certainly go all the way. The Phillies did this year. They didn't beat the Astros, but the Astros are basically what the Dodgers fans think the Dodgers are, right? Like, they've just dominated the sport. They won.
That won't get you any pushback.
Yeah. On my pod, it won't. Certainly. They'll praise me for it. But you have stuff like that. And then you have your teams like Boston Red Sox a couple years ago. They just get hot at the right time. And there are slow starters. Washington Nationals, I think 2019, they are like 14 games or whatever it was above 500, and they win the World Series. So you have to keep that in mind. And I think that when it comes to judging an overall team versus overall players, I think that there are takeaways you can make after a few weeks about pitchers and being like, yeah, that guy's velocity has dipped down. I think it's fair that we check this out and we actually react to this. Or you could be a jerk like the Yankee fans who booed Giancarlo Stanton in his first home game ever for the Yankees because he struck out 4 times. That's dumb. The former is not dumb. It is very fair. You can look up numbers. You don't freak out, but you look at this and say, okay, this is interesting. Is he showing tendencies? Is this player showing different developments? Not just 0 for 4, because as we know, maybe they hit the ball really hard. Usually hitting the ball really hard will eventually result in some hits, higher batting average, higher on base, whatever. So that's what I recommend to folks. And just understand that it's so long. There's so many players. There's so many different random people that are going to show up. As much as people love to bring up numbers, there's going to be some dude who had a 0.8 WAR last year who's going to be an all-star this year, whatever, right? Like, that's just how the game works. And there's too many unexpected things. One of my pet peeves lately has been people saying all that money just to finish blank, all that money just to finish third, all that money just. You guys said that about the Phillies. They say that about all these teams, and they still get really far. The point is that you're trying, and you should enjoy the ride, enjoy the all-star experience, and try not to freak out. It's hard. It's very hard. But I promise you, it's often more, I don't know what the word is, just often more peaceful if you're not freaking out over just a couple things, because you could lose too many. There's too many. You're supposed to lose a lot of games in baseball. That's how it works. So I think that's kind of my very roundabout way of kind of explaining it. I wonder what you think for some tips to survive the long gauntlet that is the baseball season.
Yeah, I think that it's the delicate balance. Like it is a very, very, very delicate balance that, like I said, you don't want to ride too high in April, but I also hate the crowd that's like, well, April baseball doesn't matter. Because again, they count the same in the standings. Like
Mhm.
if you finish a game and a half out or 5 games out and you want a 10 game losing streak in April, if you don't do that, like if you try your hardest to snap that streak earlier in April and you sell out and overuse your bullpen, whatever the case is, yeah, it's just April games, but come October, those add up, and so it's a delicate balance for sure. For me, I would say the best way to handle the gauntlet of this season is letting yourself get lost in your own team,
Mm.
because especially for the Royals, they've only been good twice in my lifetime. They've only been in maybe four playoff chases total and only made it twice in my lifetime to the playoffs. So if a team has a 10 game winning streak in June, even though they're 15 games out of the playoffs, still even after that winning streak, like don't just say, well, what does it matter? The season's over. Enjoy it. Like have fun, as you're saying. Like just have fun with the season, because the alternative is watching it miserably, because we're still going to watch the team. We're still going to watch the sport. So getting lost in your own team and the storylines, and then embracing those moments that you're going to know about and no one else will, and kind of wearing that as a badge of honor, like Brett Eibner hitting that walk off against the White Sox in a historic comeback, the bit largest comeback in Royals history in the regular season. Like I was at that game. No one in the world knows that besides those that were at the game and those that watched on television. And so, besides White Sox and Royals fans, it's kind of lost in history of baseball because it's such a long history in baseball. But it was still a very fun moment. So, like every season that you go to and you watch on TV or you go to the ballpark, you're going to see something historic and something awesome, and something worth remembering. So, just kind of be along for the ride. And my biggest thing with like building baseball teams is like try, because the Royals went to two World Series where like on paper they're frauds. They shouldn't have gone to the 2014 World Series. They shouldn't have gone to the 2015 series, and they won two American League pennants in a World Series. So uh, all by just getting into the dance. So just get into the dance, and the rest will fall where it may. And baseball's such a fluky, random sport. I think that the only other more random sport is hockey than baseball. So get in, have fun, dance it out, survive. Coming up, Javi, let's look back. What were the best moments in baseball from just a season ago that we've already forgotten about? You have us covered there. Coming up on today's Locked On Royals Padres crossover. We're back on the Locked On Royals Padres crossover. Javi, what have we forgot about from this past season?
You alluded to spending and trying. I want to talk about it a little bit. For those who don't know, I write for the website Just Baseball. I recently wrote about best moments in baseball last year. One of the first ones I talked about, and by the way, best as in most memorable. Sometimes it was bad stuff. There's some bad things I left off there for sake of, trying to have fun. But for me, one that I think people will forget is the MLB lockout ending. I think that there's a couple reasons to talk about this. Number one, I genuinely found it hilarious for people who, let me be very clear, because I do care about this, not people whose lives and livelihood are directly associated with baseball, not workers, not employees, not those people, but people who are just fans, they're doing fine or whatever, right? If you're just a fan and you were crying because we missed like 3 weeks of spring training games, just, I can't do it. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? That's number one. And number two, one, it was just cool that it ended. I remember my most viral tweet was MLB and MLBPA agreed to a kiss. That was fun. And number three is I found it so a little bit disheartening how many people, how many media people, how many Twitter people, how many just people I knew were doing the whole just figure it out. It's both sides are to blame. Players figure it out. Owners figure this very both sidesing of things. This very making an equation that the people who are billionaires in most cases are somehow the ones that they somehow aren't more to do with this. That it's actually the millionaire player who, that's what the phrase you heard, right? Millionaires versus billionaires. First of all, there's a huge difference between the two. But the two of us have probably met a millionaire in our life. You know what I mean? Like maybe like a 1 million salary type person, right? Something like that. We've probably come across someone like that. You don't come across billionaires. You know what I mean? You don't come across.
And also, the majority of baseball players are not millionaires.
No, exactly. That's another key part. So I find it very disheartening how much people don't realize that, like, if Hal Steinbrenner, first one that came to mind, just maybe doesn't get an extra 12 Lamborghinis this year, that we would just have a baseball season and maybe they would spend more money. Or the Oakland A's owner, or the St. Louis Cardinals owner, Milwaukee Brewers, whatever, go on and on and on. Boston Red Sox, Lord knows their fans have had enough of them, right? That somehow it's the player, right? That somehow you've been confused into things. I could go super political on this. We could get into inflation or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But bottom line, I found it very disheartening how many people were ready to also blame the players. And then here's the thing, why it's very memorable for me. As soon as the lockout ended, if you were a person complaining about millionaires versus billionaires, players need to do the right thing, whatever, and you were an A's fan, and you were a Brewers fan, a Guardians fan, and if I saw you complaining that your team wasn't spending money, I don't want to effing hear it, because that's exactly what they were striking over, at least partially, right? So I found it hilarious that teams of those fan bases, they get their baseball back. Oh, no, we lost spring training games. And then you're complaining that your team isn't spending money. Well, maybe that's what the point of this was. Maybe. Just maybe. I don't know what you think, Rylan.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, Javi. Do you have any other moments you want to discuss before we get out of here?
Past that one. No, yeah, I've got plenty. Mark Apple, his debut. I love a good, this guy, unfortunately, and it doesn't always go the right way. That brilliant scene in Moneyball when they're showing Billy Bean's career just not working out, right? Mark Apple's kind of like that, but he still made it to the league 8 years or whatever later, and that was really cool. Obviously, the Padres beating the Dodgers. I mean, that 5-run inning, it was just the stuff of legend. It was fantastic. I was just seeing Ha-Seong Kim do the little, like the Rocky like thing, or what is it? Not the Rocky, the Breakfast Club, whatever that dude's name Breakfast was Club. At the end, who does the fist bump to the sky. That's what Ha-Seong Kim looked like. I really enjoyed that. Obviously, there was a lot of them though.
Give us your absolute favorite moment of the season to get out of here.
My absolute favorite was the Dodgers losing to the Padres. There's a bunch of reasons for that. It is because they talk so much smack, and oftentimes deservedly so. It is still the Padres. They're not a very, well-functioning organization over the past decades, not necessarily now. They're great now, but, I really enjoyed just how much, like, this is what they're known for. You know what I mean? Much like my team from San Diego, or formerly from San Diego. They're just known for blowing it in the playoffs, or finding a way to lose. And then what do? They don't fire Dave Roberts. They're just going to run it back, I guess. And I think it's really cute. I hope that works out for them. And I also really enjoyed just a couple other shout outs, because I will be talking about this on a future episode with another buddy, kind of breaking down their favorite moments as well as mine. The Stephen Vogt, his daughter's his kids calling his name, announcing his name, and then him hitting a home run in that last game. I'm sorry. I'm a little softy.
It's a tearjerker.
I've grown more and more soft as I've gotten older, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed Francisco Lindor's daughter doing the Buck thing. I thought that was really cute. Buck! Whatever she said, I thought that was great. Tim Anderson's revenge against the Yankees was great after inexplicably people decided that I just don't understand how you aren't respecting how a black person wants to refer to themselves. Like, I just don't understand how we got here, but here we are. And shout out to Tim Anderson. That was really great. I don't know. And then finally, this tweet. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to say that one. Instead, I'm just going to talk really quickly about the Mariners ending their playoff drought. That was really cool. The Cal Raleigh homer. I saw it live, and that was really fun. So shout out to the Mariners. What about you, Rylan?
Yeah, the Mariners ending their playoff drought was my number one of, like, this is pretty awesome moment of the year. But to do a more cynical one, I just found it hilarious that the same people who were complaining for the last 5,000 years about baseball's not getting up with the times anymore, and they really need to stop living in the Stone Ages, and they really need to start advancing themselves, were the same people who were like, oh my gosh, is Aaron Judge going to hit his 60th home run on Apple TV? It's like, well, which is it then? Like, do you want them to advance and go into the
No.
streaming age and progress themselves into the new era of
100%.
society? Or do you want them to be in the Stone Age? Because you can't have both. Like you can't be screaming at them, "Hey, you've got to get on streaming services. Hey, you've got to reduce blackouts. Hey, you've got to start being convenient to modern fans." And then be like, "Well, not that way. Don't do it that way."
Yeah, don't
It's
do it
also
that
funny
way.
that like you can't be like Michael K sucks, and then all of a sudden
Yes.
you're like, "How can Michael K not be the one to call Judge's 60th home run?"
This is what I've been saying too. It was incredible. People, I mean, the K-Rod cast. It was literally a joke on Twitter for the longest time. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, no, Michael K should call it. What are you talking about? I thought all of you hated Michael K. Like, what's going on here? It's like
it's hilarious. And then to make it even worse during that thing, baseball fans that were like, why are they breaking into my football Saturday to watch Aaron Judge try for 60? But they're also going to say this offseason, why doesn't baseball get enough coverage? Again, you can't have it both ways. Either you want baseball to have coverage regardless of what's happening, or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So while you take a drink, Javi, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything else to say, our parting words for the week?
No, just, hey, wishing the Royals the best of luck. I don't think they've signed literally anyone this offseason. Maybe.
Whoa, go check out Locked On Royals. They've signed Ryan Yarbrough. They've signed Jordan Lyles. I'm taking the floor away from Javi. You're ejected from the screen now, as a matter of fact. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.